Hey loves, welcome back to my channel. Today guys, I'll be checking out you can't blame all Palestinians for Hamas, and this is from Piers and Grace Blakeley debate. And without much ado, let's see what Piers and Grace Blakeley has for us in this video.
Welcome back to Uncensored. Well, still with me is the CEO and co-founder of the Daily Wire, Jeremy Boring. I'm joined by my pack, the author and socialist Grace Blakeley, Talk TV contributor Paula Rowan-Adrian, and the journalist and author Hilary Freeman, who I'll come to all three of you in a moment. Jeremy, I just want to talk to you, just pivot slightly. I wrote a column for the New York Post yesterday about this kind of farcical situation in America where universities like Harvard, who were literally just named the worst school in America for failure to exercise free speech on campus, now saying that the reason they allowed their students to all sign this absurdly offensive letter in the immediate aftermath of these attacks, effectively siding with Hamas, was because of their devotion to free speech. And the reason I think it's relevant for you to answer that is I know that you, as a company, you're producing your own children's content to counter the left and woke propaganda and so on. So it comes to me there's a neat link here. But what do you make of what's been happening in these universities in America?
I think that the universities are in many ways victims of their own rhetoric. One of the dangerous things to do in life is to say things out loud, because pretty soon you'll have to defend them, and soon after that you'll start to believe them. And Harvard has been preaching this sort of intersectional hierarchy now for at least a decade and maybe more. The problem with the intersectional hierarchy is that someone has to be on the bottom. In the sort of name of equality or of fostering some sort of better sense of equality, they've created a situation where, people who they see as having been historically in places of power now are at the very bottom and have been completely dehumanized. And one of the funny quirks is they think that that is sort of anti-majoritarian, anti-patriarchy. In America, it's anti-Christian white male in particular, and that it protects minorities. But of course, one of the smallest minorities in the world is the Jews. And unfortunately, in every other way, they seem to fit more in positions of power. They tend to excel academically. They tend to excel in business. They're disproportionately represented in media, in education, in science, in traditionally white collar and governmental type roles. And so the intersectional hierarchy being preached by these schools has left them in a position where, the most probably hard done by minority of the 20th and 21st century somehow has been dehumanized by them. And they don't know how to get out of the way of their own bad thinking on this issue.
There was actually a professor at Cornell who was caught on camera doing this. I think we have it.
Hamas has shifted the balance of power. Hamas has punctured the illusion of invincibility. That's what they've done. It was exhilarating. It was exhilarating. It was energizing.
Exhilarating and energizing. That's a professor at a top American university. I found that completely shocking. A, that he would have that thought process, but B, you would be so brazenly free to do it in public like that.
Well, sure. I mean, if what that professor had said instead is that gender and biological sex are inextricably linked, he'd be out on the streets by now and never work again. Instead, he says that it's exhilarating to watch children murdered in their homes because of some sort of bizarre academic theory about power structures. Here's the thing. Strength does not necessarily connote virtue, but strength also does not necessarily connote a lack of virtue. Weakness does not confer upon a person virtue any more than weakness confers upon a person a lack of virtue. There are wonderful Jews in the world, and there are terrible Jews in the world. There are wonderful Muslims in the world, and there are terrible Muslims in the world. There are wonderful people in positions of strength. I think the West has done a relatively extraordinary job compared to other societies throughout human history. And there are terrible people in positions of power. We need only look to the ruling regime in China, among others, to know that.
And Jeremy,
what happens when you engage in this collectivism is you forget about the individual.
Right. We know a lot of this obviously starts from childhood. You as a company have decided to take on this, what you see as the indoctrination by the woke left of kids. Tell me just briefly about that.
Yeah. Well, I think that one of the things that we at the Daily Wire feel is that childhood has been sort of distorted. On one hand, we have this university system, as you were just discussing, that infantilizes adults. We refer to 23-year-olds as college kids, and we treat them like that, like kids who aren't responsible, who have no agency, who can't be held accountable for their own actions. On the other hand, we have actual children, actual kids, and instead of letting them live in a world of imagination and adventure and joy and wonder, we want to use them as political props. We want to march them in our rallies. We want to hold them up as some sort of symbol of the struggle against, entrenched power structures or whatever the in vogue terms are. And what we believe at the Daily Wire is actually, why don't we let adults be adults, including 23-year-olds, and why don't we let children be children? And so we've launched this initiative, Bent Key, which is our new company, our new app, and it's just entertainment for kids. It's not overtly political. We're overtly political as a company, of course, but our content at Bent Key is not. It really is just a place where kids can sit down, actually enjoy entertaining content, and parents don't have to worry about having these sort of destructive ideas of the moment.
Jeremy, I've got 4 kids, and I say hurrah to that. Honestly, I do. I'm sick and tired of these kids getting grabbed by people who think they know what's best for what these kids should be thinking and doing. It's ridiculous. I've got to leave it there, Jeremy. You've been brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for rolling with the punches earlier. You came on to talk about this, and we then brought you in to respond to what Bassem Youssef said. I think that was important, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Hillary, welcome. First time we've had you on. Bassem Youssef, very fired up. I mean, a lot of people who are pro-Palestinian historically are very fired up about this. Tonight, as we came on air, this as yet unverified in terms of who's responsible, but the Hamas are claiming that this is an Israeli airstrike on a hospital that may have killed 500 people. It comes back to proportion for me. What is the correct response to the outrage of October the 7th?
I don't know what the correct response is, but I don't believe that Israel would be stupid enough to bomb a hospital the day before Biden
Can I just
arrives.
say, Israel has released a statement already saying that they warned civilians to evacuate the hospital.
That has been
prior
claimed to be not true. That's been taken down by Al Jazeera already. It wasn't true.
There's a lot of stuff flying around.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people putting videos they claim are Hamas misfiring a rocket. Others are saying it's definitely Israeli.
Yeah.
I think we need to wait for absolute clarity on this. What is indisputable is a hospital has been hit, and it appears hundreds and hundreds of people have died.
Yeah.
It feels to me, with President Biden arriving tomorrow, this is a bit of a game changer.
Yeah, which is why I don't believe it was deliberate, because it just doesn't make sense that they would do that.
But is it the kind of thing which you would say that if you're bombing the hell out of Gaza and this happens, is collateral damage and you have to suck it up?
I don't think Israel has ever targeted hospitals. It would always avoid hospitals if it possibly could. So, no, of course, I don't think that it's good to...
Israel has already targeted hospitals by saying that it was shutting off power and water, which resulted in hospitals overflowing with patients that were effectively untreatable. That was considered a war crime. Many people have called that out as a war crime.
Grace, just to be clear, the Reuters news agency is now reporting comments from the Israeli military saying its intelligence shows a Palestinian Islamic Jihad group is responsible for the hospital attack, had a rocket barrage from Gaza intended for Israel, passed near the Gaza hospital and is hit. We don't know yet.
We don't know.
So let's
talk about what we do know, shall we?
Yes.
Okay, we know that the Israeli state has committed war crimes. We know that they have instituted basically a regime of collective punishment. We know now that they've used white phosphorus in civilian areas, which is considered a war crime. We know that this comes on the back of the brutalization for many, many years now of the Palestinian people.
We also know that
by the Israeli state, 6,400 Palestinians have died in confrontations with Israeli troops since 2008, including 1,400 children.
We also know that Hamas just perpetrated one of the worst terror attacks in modern history and the worst attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust.
And so I can answer your question, Piers.
Yes.
I can answer your question about proportionality because international law tells us what the answer is in relation to proportionality. It tells us that we have a right to defend ourselves. It tells us that we have a right, whilst defending ourselves, to ensure that the outcome is ultimate peace. And that is what, as far as I'm concerned, we have not witnessed, even in the minute that we've been on.
And we know
if we were to ensure that the rule of law was applied, which is what I hope Joe Biden is going to be reinforcing when he visits and when Rishi Sunak visits, I hope that that's what they're going to reinforce.
This is quite clearly, though, not what many people within the Israeli government want. One Israeli minister said that he wanted to unleash a second Nakba Do you guys know what that means?
Yeah.
You know what the Nakba was, right? The official position of the Israeli state for a long time has been there was no Nakba, there was no catastrophe, this didn't happen. This foundational act of violence that really led up in many ways to the conflict we're seeing today
Also
did not happen.
important to note,
this Israeli minister has said
Israel's
there was
Minister
a
of National
second Nakba.
Security, Ben-Gvir, says that the only thing that should enter Gaza until the hostages are released are hundreds of tons of explosives from the Israeli Air Force, not an ounce of humanitarian aid. Now, that strikes me as a statement which doesn't care about international law.
Clearly.
Right?
Well, Ben-Gvir is appalling. And
But isn't that the problem?
Israelis think
Isn't that the problem
too.
Netanyahu has? He's packed
Yes,
his cabinet
yes,
for political self-expediency. He's packed the cabinet with a bunch of right-wing headbangers
Absolutely.
that have been saying stuff like this for a long time this year.
Absolutely, and that is a part of the reason why this has happened. But you can't blame Israel again for what Hamas did. It's again people trying to justify
you can't blame Palestinians, all Palestinians, for what Hamas has done. And that is what many actually we've seen now. IDF soldiers, we've seen people saying this is a war with Palestinian civilians.
Do you agree that Hamas should be removed?
Piers, you know my answer to that question, and it's so frustrating the way that whenever anyone comes on these shows and talks about the horrendous loss of life that has been inflicted on Palestinians for many, many years, there's this idea that you can ask this question: should we condone Hamas? Should we condone Hamas? Should we condone Hamas? And what that does is it basically
should Hamas be removed?
It breaks. Of course, Hamas should be removed.
Okay.
Nobody seriously doubts
how
that.
do you remove
but as
them?
soon as you respond to the question, I said Israel has committed war crimes, and you respond by saying, should we remove Hamas?
No, Grace.
The implication,
if we all agree that Hamas should be removed, my question is, how do you remove them?
What do we know about Hamas? We know that actually Netanyahu has said in the past that he wanted to strengthen Hamas because that was the only way that he could ever get rid of the Palestinian state. He has said that outright. We now have evidence that he knew about these terror attacks. Shin Bet knew about these terror attacks. We have evidence that Shin Bet said this was an immense intelligence failure, and there was intelligence that suggested that this was going to happen.
There's no question.
Netanyahu
did not know
Netanyahu would allow this
Hillary.
to happen to his people. There is absolutely no way. That's a conspiracy theory.
The head of Shin Bet has come out and said this was an extraordinarily intelligent failure.
As a Jewish person, this has been a nightmare 10 days.
Yes.
But as a Palestinian person right now in Gaza, they're going through, if they're an innocent Palestinian civilian, they are going through utter hell too. Do you feel empathy for them too?
I feel absolute empathy for them. And all the Jewish people I know, nobody wants Palestinian people to suffer. Nobody does. We want to get rid of Hamas and we want our hostages back.
And so to answer Piers' question, how to remove Hamas, is it going to happen by a ground war?
I think that is the only way you can possibly do it, but the consequences could be disastrous.
Exactly.
We've got to leave it there. We've run out of time. Thank you all very much.
Wow, you guys, that was such an interesting one from Piers Morgan. Let me know your thoughts on this one, because as it stands right now, I don't even know what to say concerning this Israel-Hamas war, because I don't want to apportion blame to the wrong party. Let me know whose side you are on, and I really had fun reacting to this video. If you guys totally enjoyed watching, give this video a massive thumbs up, comment, share, and all that good stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.